Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Hello and welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 307. I am John Davis, and joining me around the table at MotorWeek Central today is Greg Carlos, Jessica Ray, and Alex Kellum. And we've got a jam-packed podcast for you. We've, of course, got three cars to talk about like usual. We have a lightning round talking about the demise of the under $20,000 new car. And we've got a viewer question about the value of new cars and some new car technology. Okay, everybody, let's get right to it. We've got a new season 43 of MotorWeek. So what do you think our fans will be expecting, surprised the most at? Who wants to start? Ta-da! All right, I'll start. Honestly, there is something new we are trying. People probably realize that MotorWeek is a scripted television series. The road tests are all scripted. Even, everything basically I say on camera is scripted. And we've always been that way because we want to make sure that we can get the maximum amount of information across in the first try. So, right now, the hottest stuff on television are reality shows where there might be a format, but really the show just sort of develops around whatever the folks on the show do. And so we're tipping our toe in the water. And so during the course of the next season, you're going to see a couple of new reality segments. We haven't settled on the exact name yet. And I don't want to really give too much away, but shall we just say that some MotorWeek fans will get, hopefully, the thrill of their life, or at least their automotive life.
I think that's a really nice tease of it.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
it's going to be exciting. And Greg, you've got a lot to do with it. Is there anything else you want to add without giving it away?
I've been hard at work. I can't even tell you how long on this thing, because this has been percolating for a while.
Percolating for quite a while.
And to now, we actually, as we are recording this, we have a date scheduled to shoot this. We have a MotorWeek viewer participating who is just super excited. We're super excited to meet him. And it's going to be a different segment, and that really excites me because it's very different from what we do.
It's also going to be the viewers are going to see it differently. There will be a long version of it that will actually be on social media first. Where will it be?
So this will be on our YouTube channel. This is going to be like a digital first production,
right?
In which we're going to have we're going to see what we get, and
gives us a little more freedom.
Yeah, we don't have to adhere to a strict time code, which we do have to do on the TV series. And then we will do a shorter version of it that will be in a show. And all of this will happen if the weather gods shine on us in October.
Yeah.
So it should be very
even if they don't shine on us.
Yeah, no, we're
doing
planning
something. We're doing it.
Rain or shine. Yeah.
One of the other things, and this is completely because of viewer response, our young car guru, Giuseppe Aiatarola, is now an official part of our Your Drive team of car care experts. This is 4 now, and he's done some new segments for our new season, and he's just as charming and knowledgeable as ever. And I think he's really added another dimension to the program, and we're just very excited to have him on board officially.
He's definitely the youngest person to have a photo on our photo wall.
Ever. Without any
it's
question.
Right outside my office. I see it every day when I walk in.
And along with all of the incredible number of vehicles we're going to test and all the adventures that Greg and Stephanie Hart are going to go on and everything else we do, around the first of the year, we're actually finally, after many years, going to be launching our MotorWeek app. As it is right now, if you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. But the app is going to basically offer some new dimension and just make sure that wherever you go, if you need the information that we have, that it'll be handled at your fingertips, in your pocket, so to speak. And hopefully it'll also bring some new dimensions into the information we provide, like more information about EVs, which whether you love them or hate them are what's on everybody's minds, it seems, these days. So a lot is going to happen over the next 12 months at MotorWeek, and we hope you all are there watching and listening for it. You want to add anything else?
Oh, just going to be testing a lot of new cars.
Yeah, a lot of new cars. And let's get right into that. We've got 3 cars we're going to talk about today, the Toyota Land Cruiser, the Acura ZDX, and we're going to save towards the end of our podcast the new generation 2024 Ford Mustang that both Greg and Jessica have driven. But I'm going to start with Jessica and the 2024 Land Cruiser. And, Land Cruiser traditionally has been really the upscale Toyota SUV experience. They were big. They were based on models shown around the world. Not a lot of people actually got in them because they were fairly pricey. But 2024 is really not only a new Land Cruiser, but if I'm not mistaken, this big boxy unit is not as big as it was, and it's kind of taking a different direction.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is a very, very different Land Cruiser than we have known before, right? I want to say like one of the biggest departures is, of course, size, and that's like all around. It's the dimensions of it. It's also the size of the engine. We're moving from a V8 to a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine.
Not even a V6.
Right. Now, this is part of Toyota's new iForce Max hybrid powertrains. It's what they call a performance hybrid.
Right.
So when we look at the numbers for something like that, the outgoing V8 model was about 380 horsepower and 401 pound-feet of torque. This is less horsepower. We're at about 326, but this is very torquey, 465 pound-feet of torque.
And I should point out, Acura tried this. Honda tried this with the very first Accord hybrid. It's going after more performance and some better fuel economy, but fuel economy is not the main thing.
No, not here. I wouldn't be expecting this to get like 30 miles per gallon by any means. But I will say, like you said, this is no longer a full-size SUV. We're now in the mid-size category. And this is truly cousins with the all-new Lexus GX that was recently revealed. And in that doesn't mean that the Land Cruiser, the full-size version, won't ever exist again. It's just not going to be here in the States. It's still a global product. This is what is called the Prado in other markets, which was always very similar to the GX.
Right.
So that's kind of what we have now. Toyota sort of just rebranded it a little bit, and they will sell it in global markets. So it's still built on a body-on-frame platform. It's going to be built on that same platform that the Tacoma, the Tundra, Sequoia, all of them are built on.
And it's going to be built here.
No.
Eventually, I thought.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
That was the rumor I heard.
That I feel like we will know that answer probably more when we learn more about the new Forerunner, especially because they have moved Tacoma production a little bit. They've been moving their production around, but so this is actually a 5-seater only. So
no third row option at all.
No third row, but it's still pretty big. So it has a fair amount of cargo space in it, which is nice. But it is kind of limiting especially for that size of a vehicle. I mean, most mid-size utilities of this size, something like the GX, right, would have a third row.
What do you think is the single most? What's the high point, the wow factor of this vehicle to anybody that's a Toyota fan?
Probably the price.
Yeah.
The price, it's going to be just under about $60,000 to start.
Instead of 70
instead of 80. I mean, I think the outgoing one started at like $85,000, something like that.
What do you guys think about? I mean, it's actually refreshing to see somebody launching all new internal combustion engine, whatever powered vehicles. And Toyota, of course, no one does hybrid systems better than they do. But this move, I can't say, higher volume, but a down market. Think it's a smart one?
Yes, I think so. they have so many people who love the Land Cruiser name and just the idea of a Land Cruiser. And it kind of got to the point, you know, it went away for, what was it, a year or two when they announced that the new Land Cruiser wasn't going to come over. We eventually got the GX, which is essentially what the Land Cruiser is overseas. But like the Land Cruiser for the last decade, maybe more, just kind of was like so un-Toyota. Like you forgot that it was there. You forgot that it was a Toyota. And I feel like people still wanted one, but they couldn't afford one. And now they are bringing it back into, and I know it's not quote unquote affordable, but when you're looking at people who are spending closer to $60,000 on the 4Runner, which is 15 years old at this point. I mean, like, I think
it was a good idea to rein in the price. I mean, I'm sorry, but I think the price of new vehicles right now has gotten crazy.
Types of vehicles. Look at all the people buying Wranglers and Broncos and Defenders. I mean, like, they obviously saw what people were doing, what they were buying, and said, hey, we'll just make the Land Cruiser smaller and just cash in on what everybody else is cashing in on.
That's what I was going to say.
They at the program, because I saw it in person, they constantly were saying like enthusiasts, like this, especially their base model 1958 trim, which is pretty bare bones.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what I was getting to with the whole like overlanding. Especially now we see so many like SUVs come out that it's like here's the SUV and then here's like a trim that adds black cladding and all-terrain tires, and it's nice to see them, like you said, like they're gearing this towards enthusiasts. Maybe they're taking a jab at Bronco and at Wrangler more so. And like we were saying, I know 60 grand is still like not cheap by any means, but I mean, if you're looking
better
at
than 80.
Yeah, it's better than 80. And if you're looking
Wrangler Rubicons for the same price.
if you look at a loaded up Bronco, I mean, you're looking at roughly the same price. So it's, you know, it's cool to see them kind of enter that and do it in a way that, I mean, it looks great. It looks the part, but it is also more than just the looks. Yeah. So
I think we're going to see even more of that, because the rumor is, of course, that the new 4Runner is going to be, you know, kind of aimed directly at Wrangler as well.
Yeah, I think this product, a lot of people were like, well, where does the 4Runner stand? Because when we look at like where this will fit within their lineup, it's underneath the Sequoia, but it's still at a $60,000 starting price. That still slots above the 4Runner. So what exactly does this mean for the 4Runner?
I think the 4Runner is going to be tougher than ever. It'll be targeted directly at the heart of Wrangler, I'm sure. It has to be. Let's move on, though, to, since we're with Alex, our second vehicle, the 2025 Acura ZDX. Alex is going to take the lead on this.
Absolutely.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah, very different. So you may have heard that, ZDX. You may be thinking, man, that sounds kind of familiar.
Oh, yeah, it does.
That's a little throwback. Well, there was a ZDX back in 2010, and it lasted till about 2013. You may have seen one on the road. It
was an attempt at doing a hatchback that was an SUV.
If you've never seen a ZDX, you've seen its Honda cousin, the Cross Tour.
Right. So yeah, it's an SUV that is coupe styling. I think, putting it lightly, almost fastback. Well, the ZDX is back, and it has dropped two things. One is the fastback exterior. It's got a little bit of a swept-back, but we'll get to that. And the other thing it's dropped is the internal combustion engine. This is an all-electric nameplate, and I believe it's the first all-electric
for Acura,
which is pretty cool to see. They also have, we'll get to it, it's going to be their fastest production SUV in the Type S, but we'll get to powertrain in a little bit here. The more interesting thing here is how they are building this, because it's built atop GM's Ultium platform. For those that don't know, this is the same platform. I guess the best comparison here would be the Cadillac Lyriq. That's what is being used there. And it's even going to use the same battery, which I believe is 102 kilowatt hour. I have it written down later in my notes. So the ZDX, two-row, five-seater. If you look at it, the Acura design language is very present, and you may, when you hear the seats and you hear the rows, you may think more RDX currently, but in terms of size, it's actually closer to the MDX, which would be their three-row. So just to give you the numbers here, the ZDX is going to be 198 inches long on a 122-inch wheelbase. If you compare that to the MDX, they're very, very similar. 198 inches long on a 114-inch wheelbase. And I should have said the Lyriq is basically the same as the ZDX, like same dimension. I think it's like an inch shorter, but that's like
So does
like
the ZDX
barely.
have 3 rows or is it a 2-row?
The new ZDX, I
Yeah.
believe, is only going to be a 2-row,
Okay, so
2-row,
it's-
5-seater.
I imagine that the
They've
size.
got an awfully big battery.
Yeah, it's a big battery, so it makes
There's
sense.
no, yeah, I mean, if with that roof line, getting
Yeah.
a third
Yeah.
row in there would be impossible.
Would be a challenge. So it is about a foot longer or so than the current RDX. So that kind of gives you an idea, like visually, where it's at. Again, it's going to compete with the Lyriq in a lot of ways. Looking at the, you think Cadillac, you think the Lyriq is going to be, very upscale, very premium, and of course Acura being Honda's, upscale cousin there. But it's not like over the top. Lots of screens in there, like an 11-inch digital cluster and like an 11-inch touchscreen. But nothing about it is like too over the top.
different interior
And
too.
I
than-
think that is actually, you're getting to the key question, the big question everybody has. And this is not the first time that Honda has shared vehicles with another manufacturer. Will buyers have a problem with the fact that it is based heavily on a GM chassis? I don't think so.
I mean,
think
it's built in a GM factory.
and they've done that before with Mitsubishi. And
Right.
The point is, it's smart. After General Motors spending umpteen $1 billion developing this modular electric platform, I think Honda's being extremely smart.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause
if you
that's all they're basically buying is that basic platform.
Right. If you can piggyback off of it, keep R&D costs down, thus, nothing being passed off to the consumer there. I mean, why not? Save a little bit of
And
cash
the
there.
commonality of parts will only help.
So in terms of powertrain, I already mentioned the 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, but there's going to be 3 trim, well, technically 2 trims, but I guess 3. There's going to be an A-spec trim, which you can get as either a single motor or a dual motor. That's a trend we see a lot with EVs.
For all-wheel drive, dual motor.
Yes. So the single motor is going to do 340 horsepower and 325 miles of range. Those are estimates right now. That's not to be confirmed quite yet, though I'm sure we'll get that at launch. The dual motor, they weren't specific on the power, but range is estimated at 315. So not a terrible drop. And then, of course, there is the last trim, the Type S. I should mention these all use the same battery pack, by the way. So that's all going to be the same across the line. So the Type S, the downside is you get less range. It's a dual motor. You get 288 miles of range. Again, that's a current estimate. The upside is that you get 500 horsepower, which again makes it their fastest production SUV to date. So that's also going to come standard with air suspension, adaptive dampers, optional summer tires. The Brembo brakes, though, are also standard. And then pricing, the ZDX is going to start somewhere around the $60,000 range. They were not specific, but roughly in there, which is around Lyriq pricing currently. And then for anyone that is wondering, Honda is also jumping on this bandwagon as well with the Prologue. So that will be coming out.
Which we should see pretty soon.
Yeah, I would imagine we'll be getting like similar kind of like details on specs pretty soon.
I have to stop everybody and just ask, let's spend a few minutes just talking about this. We are going to see over the next 12 months a flood, a tsunami of new all-electric vehicles. And yet they're already stacking up on dealer lots. There's a 100-day supply of EVs right now, which is well over the 60 that is normally considered reasonable. Do you think there's going to be buyers for all this? Just your gut feel. Are we in an era where, build it and they won't come?
I think
it's very worrying.
The thing is, it's the pricing. I think that the problem right now is like, the new Escalade IQ came out right recently. I mean, that's a 6-figure EV, and then Cadillac was like, all right, or GM maybe they're like, all right, we've now have our
premium
top ends, and now we'll focus on the little guys. But like, it's going to be like in stages, right? Like, when are we going to see the $35,000 EV that isn't a Bolt, right? Because that segment of car is dying. I mean, the Spark is gone, the Fit is gone. Nobody wants that.
We're going to talk
size
more
of car.
about that.
So I think the pricing is such a huge issue. I think.
And
Go ahead.
While we wait for that trickle down, at the same time, we have automakers coming out with very cool things, and also what could be seen as last ditch or like last hurrahs. So like, for example, we're saying 60 grand for this. We just said the Land Cruiser's at 60 grand. I know these are very like different things, or targeting different things, but if you were to ask me right now, which would you prefer? And I consider myself an enthusiast. Would take the Land Cruiser. And I think there's a lot of people right now that are saying, do I want to go with an EV? I don't know how an EV is going to fit in my life. Or do I want to go, you know what, if electric's the future, let me just spend the last few years internal combustion,
Great.
Are there buyers? Yeah. They're in Teslas. You have to get them out of Tesla. You have to get them out of Teslas.
Yeah.
Honda has to
And
get
Tesla
them out
keeps
of a
dropping the
Model
prices.
X, a Model Y, whatever it is. You have to get the Tesla owner, who is a very fanatic car buyer, generally speaking, and you have to get them into your car and not a Tesla. Because I see Teslas all the time, all day, every day on my commute. And this, like, I was just thinking about it this morning. I remember going to California 5-6 years ago and thinking of a Model S as like the California Camry, because it hadn't really gone elsewhere. You saw them every once in a while. Now, like anywhere in Maryland, I'm just speaking only to what I see every day. I see them all the time.
Do you know we
So there
have
are people buying electric cars? They're just buying Teslas.
Do you know Maryland's one of the top 4 states in the country as far as adoption of EVs per capita?
I believe it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of
Yeah,
electric
I
cars.
could see
The Munich Auto Show, what we used to call the German Auto Show, it's now in Munich, IAA or IAA, just concluded, or it's in the process as we're doing this podcast, but the press days just concluded. And the journalists that were there basically were amazed at how much less expensive some of the electric vehicles are, and they're all coming from China.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
BYD right now is building they're going to build 3 million plug-in hybrids and full EVs this year. 3 million.
Yeah.
And they're targeting Europe. Eventually, I imagine they will target the U.S. But what concerns me is if we don't, in this country, start producing some EVs that are really affordable for the average household, somebody else is going to do it. And it's probably going to be the Chinese. Also, I saw a report this week that in order to counter the Chinese in China, that Volkswagen has dropped the base price of the ID4 to $20,000. I don't know how much any details on that, but I did see a headline out of Munich.
Wow.
Well, anyway, I don't want to spend the whole podcast on this because we easily could, and we are going to talk about the premier car for our new season, the new generation 2024 Ford Mustang, a little bit later. We're also going to be talking about a viewer question that's pretty interesting. It has to do with automatic emergency braking. But first, and we alluded to this earlier, let's talk about a trending automotive topic. Kia has announced that they're discontinuing the subcompact Rio. Mitsubishi has canned the Mirage in the U.S. Allegedly, and I think it's true. And there's even rumors of the end of the Nissan Versa is coming. Soon there may be no new vehicles for sale under $20,000. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have an inexpensive vehicle that maybe is a small SUV, but that basic transportation is probably gone. What do you think of this, and what do you think it means for the car buying future?
I'm a little curious, John, of the time like when, because I don't know that I was cognizant.
This has happened before.
This is what I'm saying. Like when cars went over that like $10,000 threshold.
We've had this discussion at 10, at 15, and now we're doing it at 20.
I mean, it does concern me just because I feel like I am in that sort of that, like if I'm buying a new car soon and I am in that realm.
And you were very price conscious.
Very price conscious. Right. I mean, I have a Maverick that's going to be built soon, and the appeal of it was that it was very inexpensive. It did used to start under $20,000, no longer starts under $20,000, and mine has a little bit of options on it, but it's still under $25,000. So I am worried. It does worry me because, especially because we have very big problems right now with our used car market. And that's where anybody who
can't get a new car for under 20, that's where they go.
Exactly. And the problem is, when the pandemic happened, everyone, if you had a decent used car, you traded it in. You went to CarMax and you got a bunch of money for it, or you went to a dealer and you got a bunch of money for it. And so all the stuff that's left in private sale that you could probably get a deal on is not good. I mean, I look on like Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and it's
very high mileage.
High mileage, rebuilt titles, salvage titles.
Dealers are having a problem all across the country getting good used cars right now.
It concerns me. I am very concerned about it.
Anyone else?
I don't know if I have an opinion on this because it, to me, feels like such a multifaceted issue. I feel like there's a lot that plays into this. I mean, I agree with the sentiment that it's a shame that, if you can't buy a new car under 20 grand, that's unfortunate. And then at the same time, we also say, like, what do we always say? Like 30's the new 20 kind of thing. Obviously, there's a natural progression in the value of money. And then there's also the discussion of, are people's wages staying up to accommodate for this? The pandemic was also a huge shift in used cars, new cars. It's just such a unprecedented time. And I am tired of living in the unprecedented times. I want precedented times again.
Except precedented time would mean probably we're way overdue for some form of a recession when cars under $20,000 would be more in vogue. So, it bothers me that the automakers, which they have done repeatedly, leave themselves wide open to a big drop in sales when they have nothing to offer at the lower end if the economy goes south. And it will one day. Greg, anything?
Yeah, like Alex said, this is a very complicated topic disguised in what seems like not a very complicated topic. I think the simple fact is that if the automakers were making money on it and were seeing a way to make money on it, they would offer this car. The fact is, they are not making money off of it. If it didn't, they're not going to do it if it doesn't make them money. We are not buying these cars, apparently.
That's right.
People are probably, if I had to guess, are attracted by that low price tag, and then they get into the dealership and they see, ooh, look at that fancy thing. And they're like, well, hey, we now offer 6 years, 7 years financing. This is what your monthly payment will be. And then it's like, why not go for that $30,000 model instead of the $25,000 or $22,000, whatever it is.
And people are holding on to their cars longer now, so they may be looking at that as saying, "Oh, it's an investment. I'm going to keep this for
in other words, I'm not sure of what's going to be available out there, so maybe I won't sell
Pony
that
up
used
now
car.
I would love for things to be cheaper. Trust me, I am the first person to raise my hand for that in my personal life. But it's just, like I said, the fact is people aren't buying these low-end cars.
And so they're not going to sell them. Okay, before we move on to the Mustang and our viewer question, I do want to stop just for a minute to thank once again our advertisers for the television series MotorWeek and these podcasts, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper. And thank you very much for being with us, and for our longtime advertiser, TireRack.com. Let me just say that everyone out there that watches MotorWeek or listens to podcasts appreciates your support for our series for so many years, including this email from John Capone. I'm just paraphrasing there, John. With today's vehicle's safety features, and he's specifically talking about automatic emergency braking, front and rear, is there a reason that you don't show this being tested on MotorWeek? We'd be interested to see if these new technologies actually work, which cars are good, which cars are fail. Thanks, John. And I'm going to start with a very long-winded answer, and it has to do with the history of automatic emergency braking, AEB, I guess. The modern systems were first debuted by Volvo back in about 2009. But in 2014, we actually did a feature with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, showing how they were testing the system at low speeds, about 25 miles per hour. We then basically duplicated their test with the same kind of equipment. Basically, it's a sled that looks like the rear end of a car, and we were doing the front automatic emergency braking. And we did that from 2015 roughly to 2019 when the pandemic hit. We suspended it at that time because it required too many people being too close to erect the sled that we had, and we were doing it from about 25 miles an hour. But what we were finding is that all the cars passed with flying colors. And at that point, I'm not sure how many, what the percentage was, but let's say about half the vehicles we were getting in had the feature. So after the pandemic, frankly, that number was up to close to 90% where it is today. And we just decided not to resume it because we knew historically that when a feature becomes so commonplace, we moved on to something new in our test. There are requirements that the government is pushing right now that all new cars have automatic emergency braking. That will be probably within a couple of years. We're well over 90% now. The systems out there are capable, so all the information is, of stopping you without any interaction from about 50 miles an hour. And if you do hit the brakes, that threshold creeps up a little bit. It's 60, 65. If it doesn't bring you to a complete stop, it will reduce the speed significantly to where hopefully it will not be at a fatal level. We're not capable of testing high speeds braking. I think we would be basically doing something that is beyond our realm. But I think the nutshell is the front systems work well at low speeds, and everybody is virtually on board. And within a year or two, it's going to be 100% because it'll be mandated. The rear systems are a little different, but I too have never seen a system that doesn't work fine. And it's largely because of all the advances in the sensors, the LiDAR and the radar and the cameras. So we don't do it, John, because they all work very well. That's the nutshell, but thanks for that. And we are looking into, however, what's the future of automatic emergency braking, and that is pedestrian detection, and is there a way we can test that? And also we know that probably some of the safety folks are going to be pushing for systems that work up to 90 miles an hour, but I think that's to come. Greg, you got a comment on that because you used to do these kind of tests.
I used to be very much a part of these tests, and I thought at the time they were perfect because it was still a new technology, and some of the cars didn't perform as well as other cars. And then as the years went on, 25 miles per hour wasn't enough. So me and Benny D would take it up to 30 miles, even though our standard test was 25.
Right.
And just for our own personal edification, we're like, let's see what it does at 30, 35. And it just got to the point where it was like it was the same thing every time, the same outcome, no matter what car we did. It was always stopping every time. So then the next move would be, okay, push it up, push the speed up, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Then it becomes a safety issue for us and anybody,
not to mention we destroyed our testing equipment.
Yeah, we would, and the chance that it didn't stop, we're breaking our equipment every day. We're breaking the car possibly. Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes the way as like braking tests. A lot of people who watch our show will notice that sometimes we don't include the braking number anymore when we do our straight line testing. And I will say, firsthand knowledge, we do the braking test on every single car we take to the track. We have the numbers on it. We don't always include it because I would say the vast majority of cars and SUVs are stopping under 120 feet now.
From 0 to 60. Normal. And that number used to be 150.
Yeah, we would see a wide variety, 140, 100, and sometimes 50 in a bigger
sometimes
vehicle.
Higher.
We're getting like full size 3-row SUVs that are consistently stopping at like 120, 125 maybe, and sometimes even better than that.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that if they're not in the show, I do make a point to put them online for people to see, just for transparency's sake.
Yeah. So sometimes it's a matter of timing on the show, but we've got the material, and that's a very important point. It's out there, and it's usually also included in the written script as well. Yep. Alex, you're kind of
No, I mean, kind of hit on everything, but I will
Alex,
say, everyone
has a lot to do with the road test scripts. He and Brian Robinson.
And that's kind of what I was going to say. We've already alluded to it. Like when you're writing a script for television, especially when you're constrained by the time, you have to put the most pertinent information in it. At MotorWeek, our job is to tell you about the new things and the most important things. And of course,
most important things.
0 to 60 and all that stuff, like we run all the tests, we do all of it. But when it came to this automatic braking, if every single car we get in at 25 miles an hour, like, okay, it does it. It goes from being a big thing to a small focus to just putting a line in there to now it's, okay, it works.
I mean, it's also kind of like certain things we just don't really mention anymore. Like a majority of cars have blind spot monitoring.
Right.
Right. So we don't mention when a car has blind spot monitoring because it's weirder when a car doesn't have blind spot monitoring. Right. Yeah.
Like if it's the first time it's been introduced on the like, oh, now you can get it. Like on all of them, it's standard. It's like, yeah, you might make an aside, but like for a feature like this, it's
we're not trying to downplay the safety advantage. I actually think that automatic emergency braking ranks right up there with anti-lock brakes and automatic stability control as being modern technology that is absolutely essential. And if I was buying a used car for a sibling or for anybody that I know, I would want to make sure it's got the automatic emergency braking on it. It's that important, both front and rear if you can get it, but certainly in the front. Yeah, it's a terrific system, and maybe we should mention it a little more often. But it's pretty much way
dust off the old.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Roll time.
Thanks to John there, and see if we can give it one more. I was going to say one more whack, but we don't want it to hit it. Okay, this brings us to what we've been talking about actually since the beginning of the podcast and the introduction of the 2024 Ford Mustang. Maybe the last all-new generation of the Mustang that's internally combustion powered.
Don't say that.
And I know I say that very tentatively, I hope. I mean, I know fans you're right there shouting at me. Also, though, the last car in the U.S. and North American Ford lineup. Greg, you want to start this? And I know Jessica's got a lot to say too.
Well, good.
And if anyone hasn't guessed, Alex is a Mustang owner and a real huge
daily
fan.
driving one for 11 years now.
Well, good news for you, Alex. If you were a fan of Mustangs before this Mustang, you're going to be a fan of this Mustang because you can't really mess with the Mustang formula too much. By now, I'm sure everybody's been listening and watching and reading about the new Mustang. The words, the buzzwords are evolutionary, not revolutionary, to describe the styling and really just the basic ethos of the car. You can still get a V8, still rear-wheel drive. You have some nice little performance goodies that you can add onto them now, but still at its heart, like a Mustang. The other way to describe it is chiseled, looking at it from the outside. I mean, it's evolutionary. It still is very obviously a Mustang. You still have the pony out front. The headlight design is very similar to the previous generation, the three motif there, and then in the back the 3 bars. My favorite angle of it is actually the rear, just because of what they did with the concave of coming down off the deck lid. There's a nice, cool looking concave that goes in, back out, down to the bumper that cuts through the tail lights.
Yeah, I think it looks really cool. Very reminiscent of like the 67, 68 Fastback, though this being more modern and edgy. It's a very sharp angle. It's very cool looking.
Being able to bend lights and body panels like we can do now. I mean, you can do some really cool stuff. And the way they design cars now with computers of just being able to see what light is going to do based on, where the sun is. And then if it hits this body panel, the shadow goes here and then it accentuates. Like, it's very cool. I highly recommend just kind of staring at cars now and just really looking at individual people. More so now more than ever, just because there's just so many details that you might just miss if you don't just stare at a car for 5 minutes.
Just make sure no one's sitting in the car when you stare at it. It might be a little weird.
Not sitting in traffic or at a red light or something. Jess, jump in at any time. We drove both versions. You had more time in the EcoBoost.
Yeah.
I had more time in the V8, so maybe you hop in on your EcoBoost time.
Yeah, I mean, the EcoBoost was still like very powerful, but definitely more of the daily driver than the V8 for sure. I like that you can still get a fair amount of performance in the EcoBoost as well. I think the most fun I had in it was the new drift brake.
I was waiting for you to mention that.
Which didn't take me very long to master.
Explain to people what it is.
So basically, it takes a little bit to get used to. Greg and I talked about it at length.
In daily usage of an e-brake, because typically when you pull up, it stays there. That's not what a drift brake does.
Yeah, this one, I mean, you pull up and it locks the rear wheels, but it also works as the traditional e-brake, so you have to push it in to engage it, like for an actual parking brake. But so when you're using it, it's super easy because quite literally all you do is you pull it up and no button to press at all. You just pull it and turn or brake and turn and so it was so fun.
And the purpose of this is
to drift.
That's what we were kind of talking about.
Well, it's like
what a marketing move. Like this thing serves no purpose
practical purpose
other than to just drift the car and lock up the rear wheels.
So if you're in a parking lot, slalom or chicane or anything like that, you'll be using this. However, do you think, and I don't want to get off the subject of the car, do you think there's any kind of safety aspect to it? I mean, a plus. Do you think this could be used to avoid an accident?
I mean, I think
I'm stretching here.
No, but I'm thinking after what we just talked about with like automatic emergency braking, which is pretty much on. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what's on this Mustang.
Well, it's got automatic emergency braking. I'm sure.
I don't think so.
No. So in other words, it's just a pure fun aspect. Mm-hmm. And Alex, you're basically a diehard Mustang fan.
Yeah,
you must have been excited when you heard about it.
Yeah, so I actually got to go to the reveal last summer in Detroit. They took us even before the one in Hart Plaza. We got to see it, and they told us about it. Real quick about the drift brake thing. They do say in the original press materials it's a competition ready kind of system. I'm sure real hardcore drifters will still want to tinker with it and modify with it, but
absolutely.
These cars have already been in Formula Drift, so I guess there is credence to it. Also, real quick about the EcoBoost, talking about performance, starting in 2024, can't get the manual with it anymore.
Correct.
That should be noted. You have to get the 10-speed auto, which is not a bad transmission, but
there still is a manual with the V8.
You can get the it's the Mustang people may groan at it, but it's the MT82 transmission. You still get that as the base 6-speed manual in the GT. Then you can get the 10-speed auto if you want. You step up to the Dark Horse, you can get the Tremec, but that's a whole other ball game. But yeah, I mean, when I saw it, I was over the moon. I mean, there's a couple little styling things that I'm not super crazy about, but it's still very much Mustang, and I can't complain about that in today's day and age. The interior, I mean, I'm a tech guy, so I do love the screens. I do love all that stuff.
Cool.
I've said it on the podcast before, I'll say it again. They got rid of the double hump dash, a little disappointed by that. Got rid of the flight switches, a little disappointed in that.
But I don't care about the flight switches.
I love them.
But they weren't good.
They
went one direction and not the direction I want them to go.
Look, I'm not going to say they're the most usable, but they are fun to play with.
They're cool.
I just like them. As Marge Simpson would say, I just think they're neat.
I was never on board. I get it. Trust me, man. I like switches and stuff. I was a kid, and when you go to the science center and anything with buttons and switches, I don't care what it does. But yeah, those switches never did anything for me. But they're gone. So the EcoBoost, we spent the first part of our day, and it was so hot out there. We were in Pasadena.
Really hot.
And we filmed a road test out there, which everybody will get to see here soon. But yeah, Jess was doing the EcoBoost. I had some time in it as a passenger, and I get the merits of an EcoBoost, but it is not for me. I don't think it is the sound that you want from when I think of a Mustang, I think of a V8, a GT. And I'm not saying that the EcoBoost is bad, just not for me. The V8, up to 486 horsepower, which I think is basically just a product of the active exhaust. If you go with that, which is the active exhaust is an option if you get the performance pack. So the performance pack, let's say on a GT, you can say, all right, I want a GT performance pack. That will get you standard strut tower brace, limited slip diff, wider wheels, bigger brakes. but there are also options that you unlock by going to the performance pack that you wouldn't get otherwise. So again, if you want MagneRide suspension, if you want active exhaust, if you want Recaro seats, you can't get those in a non-performance pack. You have to at least get into a GT performance pack, more money, and then add those things in there. But I will say the MagneRide and active exhaust are very much worth the extra money if you're going performance pack.
And this from a car company that's basically pledged to go almost all EV. And of course, they've already shown almost an ultimate Mustang. Just at the Monterey.
The GTD.
Yeah.
Which is
insane.
Yeah, not what we're here to talk about, but to give anyone who is living under a rock or just does not care about Mustangs, which is fair. Yeah, this thing is nuts. I think it's a 5.2 liter V8 under the hood. It has a trans-axle rear-mounted 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. They are targeting, I think, sub 7-minute Nürburgring times, which is
fast.
Very fast. Lots of carbon fiber. It's made in conjunction with Multimatic, which, if you don't know, they also partnered with the Ford GT. So this thing is going to be stupid fast, stupid fun, and probably stupid expensive.
But all the automakers, getting back to our point of some time ago in this podcast about affordability of EVs, they're hedging their bets. They're basically saying we're still going to keep our foot in the ice water at least for a while. So it's great to see it. I'm really excited. I can't wait to get behind the wheel because you two, Jessica and Greg, look like you were having just way too much fun.
Yeah, it was a good trip, man. But despite the heat and the bugs, I enjoyed myself.
Didn't seem to bother you one bit.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's our podcast, and I hope everybody out there thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to thank, we do have one more aspect before we wrap up, as Jessica just pointed out to me, and that is she must have a rant or a rave.
I was wondering if anybody else had one, but one did come up recently.
Okay,
Right
pause
to
that, that closing everything out. All right, let us have
Does
it.
anybody else have one?
I want to know
Okay.
why you were pointing at the
Well, it's
rundown.
it is kind of related to what we've been talking about today. But I wanted to point out something. It unfortunately is a rant, but I wanted to point out something about the EV tax credit that I learned very recently.
Okay.
So we know that there's like a ceiling for income requirements for the EV tax credit.
Right.
$150,000 for a single person, $300,000 married joint.
This is for the
problem there.
up to $7,500 federal tax
which,
credit.
No comment on that. But nobody really talks about the fact that there isn't a minimum income requirement for it, but the $7,500 EV tax credit is non-refundable, which means that if you don't have like the tax equity of $7,500 of income tax that you're paying per year, you can't take advantage of the full EV tax credit.
Correct.
So it doesn't help.
That's always been the case.
Yeah.
No, I know, but this is just something I sort of just realized as I was,
Yeah, you have to pay at least that much tax to be able to take credit for it.
Right. And so a lot of people are like right now the Model 3, for example, or actually Teslas across the board have slashed their prices. The Model 3, for example, is now about $40,000. And so people are saying, well, if you have the $7,500 tax credit and then you have state incentives, you could probably almost get one for around $30,000.
Right.
Well, if you don't... That
Right.
only works if you pay
If you
$7,500.
pay at least $7,500
So
in
it
taxes.
isn't helpful for the people
That's
who need the
right.
tax credit most. So
And
that
for
is my
people who the government would like to see the most in EVs and who
Correct.
could benefit the most from what they advertise as lower maintenance costs and, of course, lower cost of operation.
Yeah, so that's kind of my rant. Like that it doesn't work for everybody. And that kind of stinks.
Yeah, there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else got another rant or rave? Can I close the show out?
Yes, you can. Sorry.
Jessica is the producer, folks.
wait,
in case you haven't
no,
forgot.
just kidding.
All right, let me see. Anyway, thanks very much, Alex Kellum, our writer, digital producer and producer of this podcast, Jessica Ray, and our Over the Edge reporter, Greg Carlos. And to all of you out there, our audio engineer, Austin Harris, who makes us sound much better than we have any right to sound, and our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. And Jess, of course, is the producer. If you are wondering what time MotorWeek, the television series, can be seen on your local public television station, please go to our brand new website, MotorWeek.org. Click on the tab Watch MotorWeek. Enter your zip code, and we'll give you the days and times in your area, or hop over to our cable partner at mavtv.com for their schedule. You can also stream MotorWeek episodes for free on your mobile device or streaming box by downloading the PBS app, available at your device's app store or streaming channel library. All of the individual road test and feature segments are also available at youtube.com/MotorWeek. In other words, if you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Till next time, I'm John Davis. Thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.